Hello, I'm Mehrnaz Campbell, founder and CEO of Kimia and Kimia Reset. Thank you so much for joining us for this LinkedIn Live today. I'm dialing in from Pennsylvania in USA, and I'm curious to know where you are right now. So please write in the chat, say hi, maybe give me a high five, and let me know where you're dialing in from. As you know, I'm really passionate about helping pharma field professionals feel confident about using technology to communicate, improve their engagement with healthcare professionals. I want all the field team to feel really confident, feel good about themselves, and achieve amazing results. And it's a human element of digital transformation, enabling people to use technology confidently to engage with HCPs and delivering value to HCPs is what I'm really curious about. And to explore this topic, I've been interviewing inspiring pharma leaders to learn from them and give them a platform so they can share their expertise and their perspective. So I'm really delighted to have Dario Safaric, the founder of NEXT Pharma Summit, here with me. Hi, Dario. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Mehrnaz. Really, thanks for having me here today. And I really have to say congratulations on your great book. So the Omni Advantage, really a nice piece of book and omni-channel advice. So thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me. So just for the benefit of our audience, I think a lot of people know you, Dario, because you're so active in social media, but also the events you organize. But I just wanted to give our audience a little bit of background about you, your amazing work you're doing, but also how we met. Dario, in addition to running the NEXT Pharma Summit events, he's a VP of Sales and Marketing at MediaSoft. MediaSoft is one of the global leading pharma CRM vendors working for the life sciences industry, and they operate in over 40 countries. Dario is responsible for creating and running global marketing strategy and initiatives. He's also involved in creating key message, segmentations, database management, customer experience, social media management, and direct marketing and events. And he has organized more than 25 events, exhibitions, and roadshows in 14 countries. Outside work, he loves spending time with his family. Reading is one of his big hobbies. He's also really into cars, technology, and design, and sports is one of his big passions. I know he does running, he does CrossFit, but he's also a big fan of Premier League. And if I'm not mistaken, you support Tottenham, right, Dario?
Indeed, I do. I mean, I'm only the few one who is doing that, but definitely my favorite club in the Premier
Yeah,
League.
my son supports Tottenham as well, so you've got a pal there to support you as
Thanks
well.
a lot. Say
Um,
hi to him.
I will, I will. When we first met, I think it was online, and I remember I kind of reached out to you, or maybe you reached out to me, I can't quite remember, to talk about the NEXT Pharma Summit in Dubrovnik. And we also talked about the services you offer around social media management as well. But I remember you persuaded me to come to the Pharma Next Summit in Dubrovnik. And you probably don't know this, I'm admitting it to you, but Dubrovnik was on my bucket list. It was one of those destinations I really wanted to go because I had seen the film and I kind of thought the whole city looks so unreal.
Mm.
So it was so good to come to the conference and actually be there. But it was an easy decision for me. Like you get to attend the pharma conference, meet amazing people, and go to somewhere that was on my bucket list. But I really felt it was such a good experience because Daria, I felt although we had met online, I didn't really get to know you until I met you in person. Anybody who's met Dario can probably vouch for this. You've got this kind of like aura about you, this personality that is so creative, energetic, and vibrant that I think when you're in close proximity of you, you experience it. And I felt your event was so different to any pharma conferences that I had attended, and one that I would look forward to attend again. It's not boring, it's just creative, fun, and you don't get these cliche chats. It's very refreshing. And if I could describe it, it actually, when I was there in Dubrovnik, I thought, this reminds me of the good old sales conferences in the good old days, you know, where you get a lot of work done, but you have a lot of fun and you come away, you've done a lot, but you feel really energized and you kind of rearing to go. So I felt that in terms of creating customer experience, You did it, and you did a really, really great job. For me, it wasn't just an event, it was a true experience. So well done for doing that.
Thanks a lot, much appreciated. And of course, seeing you this year as well.
Yeah, I know. I'm really excited about it. Got my flight and my accommodation booked, and I think the gang we hung out last year are all coming. So I'm really looking forward to catching up with.
Reuniting, right? So
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think when we go to conferences, okay, the presentations and everything else is good, but most of the learning happens when you're exchanging and catching up with people during coffee or lunch or dinner.
definitely.
That's when you really.
Or the VIP party, right? I mean, the after party, that's also a great thing, I would say.
Absolutely. I think some of the people that I've interviewed and got to know really well, we met on the dance floor, and afterwards we kind of like thought, let's groove together in business as well. So yeah, definitely. So Dario, I'm going to ask you some questions, but also we've got a couple of questions from the audience who posted on LinkedIn. So I've captured them. But I just want to ask our audience, the LinkedIn Live gives you an opportunity to be part of this conversation. We just don't want to just have a chat between ourselves. So please, if you have a question, write it in the chat and we bring it into the conversation. We allow time for this. Also, if Dario says something you agree with him, just comment or give him a thumbs up. If you disagree with him, say something so we can have the benefit of your wisdom in this conversation as well, if that makes sense. So, Dario, let me kick off by asking you a few questions. I think the first one I want to ask you is, what drew you to the pharmaceutical industry? You know, I love hearing people's career paths. What led you here?
Definitely. I mean, I entered pharma like 15 years ago, something like so. And obviously, my entrance was the family company, so MediaSoft, where I run the position of the VP of Sales and Marketing. And at that time, obviously, I didn't knew that pharma is a quite complex and radical different industry, which it is, obviously, because I really consider pharma like a club. I mean, it's super hard to get in, but once you're in, it's a super great journey, right? I mean, the industry is on one side quite conservative, as we all know, but on the other side also refreshing because obviously we also look for alternative ways and channels and paths how to do the things in a different way. But in its essence, we all know that the industry didn't change heavily for the last 10 or 15 years. So I think we can all agree on that one, right? So like I said, my entrance was actually the family owned company, and I'm super happy that I'm still in pharma. So I so far I can't imagine to be in any other industry except pharma.
That's so interesting. I didn't realize you were involved for 15 years because I guess I didn't have these type of events on my horizon until a few years ago. And when I went to Reuters, then I kind of spotted NEXT Pharma and was curious to find out more about it. So is your dad still involved or
He
not?
is. He's
Okay,
still running. He's still running the shop.
okay, cool, cool. So you said you're a VP of Sales and Marketing at MediaSoft, managing relationship with in over 40 countries. How do you customize marketing strategies and enhance that customer experience in such a diverse, geographies?
Definitely. I mean, a good question, but I would say the answer is quite simple because at the end of the day, pharma as an industry is having more or less the same needs across the globe, right?
Mhm,
I mean, if you look after sales teams in, I don't know, Brazil, in UK, in France, in Serbia, or any other country, majority of those people are working in the same way, right? Which means there is this particular need, and you somehow definitely have to make the great value proposition towards those needs and to differentiate yourselves. One of the key pillars, in my honest belief, how you can differentiate is actually customer experience.
mhm,
Because if you think about the greatest brands in the world, from Amazon, Apple, Netflix, I mean, just to name few of them, we all know that it doesn't come to their superior product. Because I mean, I'm a huge Apple fan, but at the end of the day, iPhone is not much better than a Samsung phone. However, customer experience is much better, and especially when we speak about Apple, I would say they are even having a higher stage of customer experience, which is creating a cult.
mhm.
And I would say it all breaks down to customer experience, and majority of the greatest and most exciting brands in the world are actually differentiating through customer experience. And this is actually, I would say, also my DNA somehow. I mean, everything what I try to do, I really try to create memories, to create customer experience, and somehow really to deliver like a show, if you want such, if you want me to use such wording.
Yeah. And I remember the opening session last year in Dubrovnik where you stood up there and talked about your experience, your family's experience of going to the Harry Potter. And I kind of like initially thought, where are you going with this? But then as you went through the journey of things that disappointed you, things that delighted you, and you kind of like told the story from your perspective, you told the story from your children's perspective, but it was you went through the complete hero's journey on that, and then when you related it to pharma, I thought it was such a eloquent way of explaining the customer experience, and it showed your passion. So I was just curious if you could share what makes you so passionate about customer experience, because I think this is so important, is it better differentiated than the features and benefits of the brand.
I mean, like I said, customer experience, I would say, is everything and nothing, right? I mean, you have some super products, super brands, but at the end of the day, in most of the cases, they fail either, in most of the cases, due very bad marketing, very bad reputation, but also very bad customer experience. I mean, take just as an example, I think the financial industry is a very good example, by the way. I mean, if you
Mhm.
look into different financial services, or even if you look into our average bank in every country in the world, more or less, you see huge marketing budgets, you see great ads, a lot of spending on different channels, on different promotion activities, and so on. But when you come in that particular bank to the front desk, you actually see an unhappy face who is actually not delivering customer experience and who is not aligned with those previously mentioned messages, right? And that is an issue, which means there are also many other industries where you see that you see this huge gap between the promise, or at least the value proposition, and the delivery, which is completely wrong. And I'm like I said, I mean, let's maybe go one step back, and this is when I learned that customer experience is maybe one of the most important things in the world, is actually in the hospitality industry. I'm a huge fan of great restaurants, great hotels. I really like to travel, and you really see the difference from an average and a super hotel and a restaurant, especially in a restaurant, because if you compare, great food equals great food, but if you add great customer experience to that, that really is a game changer. And I would say this was somehow my moment when I realized that customer experience really is the most exciting thing which you can provide in business, in every single business, definitely. The only question is how you can implement and align customer experience across your channels and across your whole organization. And that's, I would say, the most critical part for pharma, because we all see we are still working in different silos, right? You have, I don't know, metaphors, commercial, not speaking with each other. And how can you actually have a unified customer experience strategy if you're not unified? I mean, just imagine if you would visit like a restaurant and hostess is fully, let's say, desynchronized with the waiters and the chef. It wouldn't just work, right? And I think that this is in many pharma companies, unfortunately, the state.
Mhm. And I think is a really good example using hospitality. I'm just thinking about faulty towers on one end. I don't know whether you've seen the sitcom The Faulty Towers, when everything goes wrong in this hotel.
Exactly.
And on the other extreme, when you go to a Michelin star restaurant, it's just such a seamless, you enjoy everything about that experience. Um, what I was going to say, Dario, do you have any specific example of bringing that customer experience into pharma, into the channels that you could share with us?
That's a quite interesting question. I really get that question quite often. I mean, there is no all size fits all at
Mhm.
first place. I think it all comes down to the brand which the particular pharma company is having. But I think that some things and some aspects can be definitely unified. At first place, I think that everything starts and ends with the customer. I mean, if you don't know who your customer is, and the customer is not only the HCP, of course, the story is much wider and it goes beyond the HCP, then you certainly have a problem. If you can't reply on a super simple question, what your customer wants or needs, then I think you have an issue, right? And on bottom line, how I currently see majority of the industry is that we are still very much occupied on that mindset where everything is structured around the quantity. I mean, just as an example, in CRM, we still put one visit. One visit equals one visit, right? But there is no qualitative and fine data which describes the quality of that visit, which describes the need of the HCP. So the story should go much deeper. I think that's the first piece. So as your customer, know your customer. Secondly, I'm very surprised that we still live in this mindset that we have to cover every single HCP. And I think that's just impossible. Why? Because I also know that Next Pharma Summit, and for us, it's just impossible that everyone from the pharma industry visits Next Pharma Summit. I mean, it's the same like you would expect that everyone wants to go to a Rolling Stones concert, right? It's just impossible. So that's why I think we as industry, we also should much more focus on the real customers, on the real HCPs who should be in focus and deliver added value to those particular HCPs. I mean, like I said, sometimes it's just impossible to cover everything. And the third key pillar is it all comes to the personalization of the channel, which is actually omni-channel, like you also wrote in your book, right? I mean, ask again your customer, ask which channels he wants to use, and at the end of the day, deliver that particular experience into those channels. I mean, it sounds simple, right? But we see it isn't.
I think you make a really valid point. I think we can't, if you assume everything we have would be relevant to every HCPs, we're just fooling ourselves.
Exactly.
And I think one of the other thing, I actually tested this concept at your conference and it worked, was you need to be relevant to the HCPs. So if what you want to communicate is not relevant to them, you're not going to be able to engage them. So by narrowing your focus on those who you have something of relevant to say, it allows you more time to do the personalization. So they leave a meeting or an interaction or an email feeling inspired to act rather than thinking, oh my God, not another form of communication I'm being bombarded with that actually doesn't resonate with my pain point. Do you,
Definitely.
yeah, do you think pharma really understands the pain point and deliver to it, or do you just think they just push messages to HCPs?
I would say that we are still in this push marketing environment and paradigm, right? Just to prove that concept that we are still in that era and phase. I mean, you mentioned time. I would say that time is one of the most critical parts and pillars when it comes to customer experience. Because at the end of the day, if you want to deliver even the message which the HCP wants in the wrong time, you won't deliver,
Yeah.
right? Which means time is certainly a very important component. But how you know that the time is right or isn't right, it's again leading us to insights. I mean, you should know what the HCP wants, you should know when he wants, and at the end of the day, you should deliver what he wants. Again, fuel that into the insights and repeat that for the next time to make it better and much more relevant for them. So I think that at the end of the day, sometimes it really might be much simpler than what we are doing nowadays, because we all know after COVID, more or less all pharma companies implemented the same channels. I think we all can agree on that, and we ended up with digital fatigue, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think what I find is still a lot of the field team are not skilled or competent enough to use the remote channels. So they're gradually reverting back to face to face. But HCPs have evolved, their needs are different. And I think there's a gap because if pharma is reverting back to the old way as working, they're missing out on so many opportunities. But I honestly don't think a lot of the pharma companies are measuring customer experience or put that as a metric. They're still measuring coverage and frequency because, again, if you focus on customer experience, whatever you focus on, whatever you measure, you're going to spend time, money, and effort to do it. And I think for me and our team, we rather focus on customer experience, because then they always want to come back and work with us, because we leave them with a feeling that that interaction delivered value to them. So I think I love the way you focus on it.
But on bottom line, if you think about the most expensive channel for pharma still nowadays is the rep, right?
Hmm.
But what has changed for the last 10 years when it comes to the rep itself? We still use the channel more or less in the same way, right? Except that
Yeah.
we equip them with different capabilities, with different kind of softwares, with different kind of digital links and so on. But at the end of the day, the role of the rep didn't change a lot for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And we all can agree on that.
I think they had the opportunity to change. I think there's three things: mindset, skill set, tool set. I think companies focus on the tool set, giving the field team the tool set, but they've not worked on the mindset and the skill sets to use the tools. So the tools are sitting idle. But I think there's a huge opportunity, because when we work in that area with companies to upskill their field team and have the mindset that I can recreate the same chemistry as I have in face to face through email, through digital, then they find their mojo and they're absolutely brilliant and the sales grows. But I think companies are still focusing on the wrong thing. You and I can talk about this forever, because I've written a book and you are a guru of creating customer experience. So it's really, really good to see your perspective. And I think you're right in your summary that we know what it looks like because we experience it as consumers of hospitality services, but pharma is not focusing on creating that for HCPs, unfortunately, yet. But
Yes.
that gives us an opportunity to improve on that area. Yeah. So let's talk about NEXT Pharma, because as I said, I love it. I'm one of your biggest supporters.
Thanks a
What
lot.
inspired you to start NEXT Pharma Summit, and what's your main goal behind this initiative?
Well, that's a very interesting question, which I obviously get quite often, right? I mean, the story goes that back in the role with MediaSoft, I attended all of those major pharma conferences in Europe, right? I won't promote them. And I attended, for instance, I mean, the very famous Barcelona event, I think for more than 11, 12 years, right?
Hmm.
As a vendor. And what I felt over the years is it really gets, I mean, not only that particular event, but many other conferences, they really get like repetitive. How I want to call it, I mean, you see like recycled content and recycled faces, the same topics, the same themes, right?
Hmm.
No experience at all, and also very bad production, on-site production. I mean, you still see very old-fashioned tech which is used for presenting and so on, right? And then I went for my very first conference in the States, and it was really like mind-blowing, because when I saw how a real pharma conference should look like, and I saw that in States, idea was born. It would be nice to have something similar in Europe, right? After that, I went to some other famous conferences outside pharma, like the Web Summit in Lisbon or the Next Web in Amsterdam, Festival of Marketing in London, and so on. And you really see how actually a conference should look like. I mean, great vibe, great atmosphere, great topics which are not repetitive, outlooking into the future, sparking discussions, and at the end of the day, also an atmosphere where people are not afraid to speak with each other,
Hmm.
right? And I had that idea in my mind to start it, right, for a couple of years. And back in 2019, actually end of 2018, because you have to prepare the conference, right? Back in 2018, I said, okay, let's start the journey. Let's at least start to think about organizing a conference. We launched our website in October 2018,
Hmm.
and that's moment it was super tough, to be honest, because there were many pharma conferences at that time in Europe. Many of them are not existing anymore. And I remember when I reached out to many speakers who are now speaking at Next, to be honest, they obviously declined because we didn't have a track record. No one knew us. We were the new kid in town. But there was certainly a small group of people who recognized Next immediately and who saw that we want to move the needle and that we want to do something incremental different, right? Maybe just to name few of the super early supporters. I mean, I have to mention Haider Alek,
Mm-hmm.
who worked at that time at Fairing, Davide Heron, who worked at that time at Teva. Nowadays he's with Rush. Marcos West as well. Dirk Abel, who worked at Reckitt at that time. So a couple of really early supporters who saw that we are on something great and new, and we realized our very first year, obviously in 2019, was a solid year with 100, I don't know, 40, 50 delegates. I mean, still small for a pharma conference, but for the very first year, I was satisfied, to be honest, at that time. Then we, of course, got a momentum of very positive recommendations, testimonials, some nice buzz around the conference. And we heavily prepared for 2020, and suddenly COVID came.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, it was a tough thing because I remember in February when the when we really counted like a couple of COVID cases at that time, like everyone was afraid with, I don't know, in UK 20 new cases, we in Croatia were afraid with 2 new cases, right? Uh, if you would do the math at that time, which we obviously did in February, I immediately said it won't be possible to organize a conference in May, which means we already end of February we postponed the conference for September.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember at that moment when I postponed, many of the people they literally shouted at me and said, "Look, Dari, you're crazy. Why are you doing that? This is not a serious thing. Until May, everything will be over, right?" But I mean, I think it's just it literally was just doing simple math, right? Because you see this you saw that compounding of new cases, and we saw that this will be quite tough, right? So after we postponed to September, we said, okay, let's not get stuck into that bad moment, which means we immediately moved into virtual. And during, long story short, during 2.5 COVID years, we realized 7 conferences. We engaged with 26,000 people who attended our 7 conferences. And this is really a great playground for us to grow the business, to grow the reputation, and really to make a great name for Next, which means we went back to live conferencing in 2022. Was a great year. And 2023 was a super amazing year in Dubrovnik. But from 2023, we also added another event, the Next Customer Experience event. You see that how bullish I am on customer experience by giving a individual event related to customer experience. And we are doing the very same thing today. I mean, this year, again, we are doing the Dubrovnik event in May, and in October, we are doing again the Next Customer Experience event. So, yeah, I mean, it is a journey. I would still consider ourselves as the new kid in town, right? Because still plenty of events are in front of us, and really looking forward to each of those.
Wow, that is such an amazing story, and congratulations. That is incredible, the journey that you went. I think a lot of businesses felt the pinch of COVID, and you just started this initiative a year before COVID, but you pivoted it so fast. Congratulations for doing this. I mean, to have 26,000 delegates during COVID attending your events, that's phenomenal. And, I think it shows that you're very courageous, but also you're very visionary, because the cost of entry to pharma industry events is quite high, because you're competing with really established events that has been going on for 20 years. But
Even
you
more,
made
yeah.
your mark. Exactly, you made your mark, and good on you.
But
And I think,
maybe just one very interesting insight, and I think that we all can learn from that one. I mentioned 26,000 people across 7 virtual conferences,
mhm,
which we did during 2.5 COVID years, right? How we did that? I mean, you had some even more established conferences who had like 200, 300, 400 attendees, right? Per event, in average, like I said, we had roughly between 4 and 6,000 people, which is like 20x. So how we did that? Super simple. We said, okay, let's change the business model, the format of doing conferencing by attracting people, by attracting our future customers. which is
Hmm.
pharma. So what we did is for pharma attendees, so if you could prove that you are working for a pharma company, we had free participation. So the only prerequisite was to have a pharma email, and
Hmm.
that's it. The registration for you was free. And obviously, everyone wanted to join Next because you didn't have to pay like 700, 800 euros for a virtual conference.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, it was a super bad production because, I mean, you can't replicate that great experience from a live conference into virtual. Still, you can't do that, right? But on the other side, everyone who was a vendor, he had to pay for it, right? And this was this balance. So long story short, I would say that we really adjusted and we found a quite interesting business model which allowed us to grow very heavily, to make a great name for us by giving something for free.
Yeah.
At
I
the end
think
of the day,
that's
yeah,
smart, really smart, because in a way you understood what was the pain point that prevented people entering or signing up for your event. You removed that barrier. So as they came in, they experienced it and the experience delight them. And I think what you're sharing here is actually a really good example for pharma to look at to say how they can improve engagement and attraction of their events by pivoting around the need of the customers and thinking big. um, if you say to a pharma company, I could help you have events over online events over the next 2 years that would give exposure of your content to 26,000 HCPs, I think they'd be biting your hands off it. So I'll be really interested from the audience if you've got any questions to pop in there, what you're thinking about this. Oh, there we go. We've got Maya. Hi, it's good to have you here, Maya. Maya says she agrees with you, being visionary. This is how you achieve dreams. You create a vision, make a decision, and then go for it no matter what. Fantastic. I couldn't agree with Maya more. But I think
thanks a lot, Maya.
there's parallels. There's parallels pharma can learn from what you have done. And you don't need to be a big pharma company to do this because, in terms of size, you weren't matching the size of some of those big players, were you? You're just being creative and disruptive, right?
Exactly. And I would say that that's the idea, right? I mean, if you take as an example every single industry in the world, every single famous brand was disruptive in some way, right? I mean, if you look nowadays, I mean, Tesla, if you see what Tesla has done and what they are still doing and what they will do in the future, especially with the autonomous driving capabilities, I mean, that certainly is disruptive and visionary by changing the current business model and
Hmm.
by really like thinking out of the box. I think sometimes that's quite heavy and tough because we all love actually the comfort zone, right?
Hmm.
We love the comfort zone. So when you don't have to change, when you see that the cash flow is still ongoing, that you still have great major products, why to change, right?
Hmm.
But I think you always should like question yourself and be provocative. What can be done better, and how at the end of the day you can be at least 1% better than you were yesterday. So if I think at the end of the day you can really answer on that particular question, it's again it again comes to that theory of compounding, right? Imagine if you're every single day 1% better in business, in life, in anything. Imagine where this would lead you into 1 year.
Yeah, the marginal gains theory is proven because the British cyclist team went from not winning any medals. They looked at every element of their equipment, their outfit, even the mattresses they were sleeping in, nutrition, and they improved every area by 1%. And then they went and swapped all the gold medals and they continue to do that. And I think it goes back to the point you said earlier on, pharma tends to be quite conservative um, and not take risk. But you saw a vision. You saw an event in America that made you thought, wow. And you saw the events in Europe that were going meh. And you said, what I want to do is recreate the experience in America, in Europe, in pharma. And you went for it. Good on you, man. And you've done a really good job.
Thanks a lot.
You mentioned Vienna. I'm really gutted that I couldn't come to Vienna. How did it go and what did I miss? Because I've heard great stuff about it.
I also heard some very funny things about Vienna afterwards. One of my favorite one was if you can make a great show in Vienna, which is a very beautiful city, but at the end of the day, a boring city, as we all know, and
Mhm.
even when you look after the statistics, it is one of the most boring cities in Europe, I would say. If you can make a great show in Vienna, you succeeded. I mean, just joking. This was one comment which I received from someone who actually is even from Austria. So definitely, I think was like a kudos, you know. I mean, the Vienna event was a huge learning for us. Uh, Let me explain why. At first place, the Dubrovnik event, which is still considered as our flagship event, is all about metaverse, commercial digital marketing, AI, tech, and so on, right? And in Dubrovnik, we actually draft and craft the agenda in the way that everything is related across those functions, challenges in those functions, and so on, right? In Vienna, we took a different journey, which is we really wanted to put the problem in the center and in the heart, which is customer experience, and how pharma can finally move from that engagement mindset by counting one visit, two visits, three visits into delivering something which is much more authentic or
Mhm,
customer experience, right? Which means we put customer experience in heart, and around that we actually thought about, okay, what are the problems, challenges, perspectives about customer experience from perspective of commercial metaphors, digital marketing, AI, right? And a couple of very interesting things. I mean, at the end of the day, we ended up with two super different events. I mean, you can't compare Vienna to Dubrovnik at all. Initially, I thought it will be just a replication of the Dubrovnik event in Vienna, right? But
mhm,
it isn't at all, because the Vienna event was really all about cheering up, inspiring pharma peers how to move the needle. And to prove that, more than ever, pharma speakers wanted to do individual keynotes or presentations. In
mhm,
Dubrovnik, you have the opposite. In Dubrovnik, majority of the agenda is constructed around panels, right? Uh, while in Vienna was the opposite. Majority of pharma people wanted really to take the stage, to present, to showcase what they did in field of customer experience, how to move the needle, what are the challenges. And I think was a super event. Also, one of the very interesting stats which I can share is roughly 80% of all delegates were pharma, not vendors. So
mhm.
this is also quite interesting to share. So on
Brilliant.
bottom line was really a great event in a super beautiful city. And maybe just a personal anecdote, to Vienna we have like 3 hours driving distance from our office from Croatia, while to Dubrovnik we have 7 hours of driving distance.
Wow.
Again, I mean, from Croatia to Croatia, right?
That's the same country. That's insane.
Exactly. And by the way, maybe for those who don't know, I also lived in Vienna for 7 years. So I definitely consider Vienna as my second home. Again, super beautiful city. And it was also somehow like a wish to do something in my second favorite city. So
I've even more gutted that I missed it. I met some of the pharma leaders who were sharing their experiences, and it was a brilliant experience. I think the networking opportunity you created for them to meet and share best practice with each other was phenomenal. And they said they became best friends, and they're still continuing chatting beyond the event that you created. I would just want to bring a couple of questions from the audience who were sharing it on LinkedIn. One of them is actually from Maya. She shared this question with me earlier. Maya was saying she wants to understand from you, is the expectation or the interest of pharma colleagues has changed over the past years? In other words, she wants to know, are you still looking for the same, or are we up for something different in terms of content and structure wise?
yeah, that's a good question. And thanks, Maya, for that. Maya is also one of the great supporters of our next platform, and she will also speak and take stage in Dubrovnik. So definitely very grateful to have such supporters, if I can use that word, even advocates, again, if I can use that word. Uh, well,
You can definitely. It's
well,
organic, it's not staged, so it's all right.
well, that's a quite interesting question. Of course, I would say the industry is looking into different outlooks in the recent years, and especially from perspective of medical affairs. And Maya is actually representing medical affairs, right? So we see different needs. We see different different objectives when we craft and structure the agenda. However, sometimes I have this belief that we just want to tick the box as an industry. I mean, nowadays we all know we speak about Gen AI, we speak about omnichannel, we speak about the human side and alignment with tech and digital. We speak about how to unite commercial and digital. So I would say many different buzzwords, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about those buzzwords deeper, you will notice many times, just as an example, when you speak to some pharma peers and when they describe omnichannel, they are basically speaking about multi-channel, but just using another buzzword, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would say if you really want to change, radically change, we also should change our mindset. So, to give a short answer on Maya's question, certainly the needs are changing and we see that. But I would say it all breaks down that it's very hard for us to change as an industry.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because you're being visionary and you're trying new things, but the mindset of pharma is still looking backwards rather than looking forward. And you need
Exactly.
supporters like Maya to help, change the dialogue. Talking
Exactly.
about tech stuff, I have another question from Victor J. He posted this on LinkedIn. He said, Daria, how do you integrate generative AI to tailor marketing strategies across diverse markets? And does that help you spot trends and customer communications with local market dynamics?
That's a good question. And again, this, I would say, leads us to the back conversation about the hyped terms and buzzwords, right? Which
Hmm.
Gen AI and AI certainly is. Maybe to answer that question, I would say we explore and use AI in those segments and fields which we believe could benefit to our audience. But I don't have this intention to make AI the problem. I would rather make it the solution, right? Which
Hmm.
means you have certainly some places where AI is just not applicable, and that's it. But you have some areas where AI is applicable, and obviously in some of areas from the marketing side, from the sales side, from the automatization side, we are using Gen AI. But again, it's not about speaking only about AI and thinking what AI could solve, right? Because at the end of the day, it all breaks down what the customer needs and what actually our industry needs. And maybe just to build on that, one very interesting thing when we crafted the agenda for the Vienna event, my initial thought was that everyone just wanted to speak about AI when we speak about customer experience. But when the agenda was over, I counted that less than 5% of all titles used the word AI.
Hmm.
Why? I spoke with a couple of people after the conference, and the response was, which makes perfectly sense. The response was during the preparation calls with speakers, we really candidly said, look, if you want to move the needle, let's face it, we have an issue with customer experience. If you want to solve the issue of customer experience and really move the needle, then we at first place have to be candid, fair, and open. And AI won't solve those problems, right? And at the end of the day, everyone was like, okay, that's a good point. So if you want to move the needle, we can't speak about AI because AI is just one part of the capabilities within customer experience. It's not the final solution, right?
Hmm. That's so important. I've got another AI related question, but maybe I'll bin it because I think you're making a really valid point. And I think pharma gets really excited about the shiny stuff because it's exciting and it's new and they think they need to have it. It's like a kid, I need to have this toy. But to have a good time, you don't necessarily need to have the toy. I mean, when I was a kid, we didn't even have toys. We would go out and play. So it was like connecting with other people. And one thing, I mean, I'm not against AI. I use it to automate and simplify some of my processes, and it's good. But you have to think about that's artificial intelligence, but the real intelligence that actually created AI is the humans, right? The human connection and
Exactly.
the way a human can pivot during a conversation is much more intelligent than artificial intelligence. And I think pharma invests a lot. One of the biggest spend is the people.
Exactly.
So they
Right.
need to invest on the
Correct.
people rather than giving them more tech tools, give them the confidence so they can actually bring their own kind of gravitas and their own unique talent to the surface. And I think that's where we would unleash the talent. And that's what my whole book is about unleashing the power within your people by upskilling them and giving them a mindset so they feel, yes, I can use the technology. But the technology is a tool. Technology is not going to do stuff for you. Um,
I think maybe just to build on that, I think that AI will change everything and nothing.
mhm,
Because at the end of the day, you still have some industries, you still have some cases where, at least as far as we currently know, AI is more or less not applicable. I mean, if you go to McDonald's, I would be fine with any kind of AI servicing, any kind of I don't know, waiter robot or whatsoever, right? I mean, I don't have an issue with that. But imagine if you go, like you said, in a Michelin restaurant, and if everything would be based on AI. I think that's, for the time being, and as far as we know, just not applicable. So again, there are certainly some industries, there are certainly some cases where AI won't be used maybe in such way. But on bottom line, we all know we as humans are super bad at predicting things, right?
mhm,
I mean, otherwise we would have flying cars which were predicted 20 years ago, right? But we have none of that. So where the journey will lead us, I think that no one is having the answer. We still have to explore that field. AI will stay here. That's certainly, I think that's 100% for sure. But what will be the end result and the journey, I mean, no one knows.
mhm. No, that's a really valid point. I just want to encourage our audience to ask questions. Maya, join in the conversation if you've got additional comments on this. But I think you're right. AI is everything and nothing. It could actually add a lot of value in terms of helping to do more personalization because we experience that through consumer goods that we buy. They get
Exactly.
our data, they depending on our habits and behavior, like Netflix, you watch something, you enjoy it, then you get more things like it that you're likely to enjoy, so they assess your behaviors. But I think maybe it's a long way before we get there in pharma to be able to do that. We've got a comment from Pauline. She says, I think while we need to look into future potential, we first need to get the basics of today's business environment right. Well said,
Great one.
Pauline. Totally.
Great
Yeah.
one, definitely.
Yeah. I think the customer experience doesn't need to be complicated. We need to really think about the customers. I often say sales is not about doing something to people. Sales is about doing something for people that leads to the company making a profit. So it's like a win-win for both parties. But I think the, like you said, the push channels is about doing stuff to people. And I think HCPs are humans. They are bombarded with a lot of
Exactly.
data. They rather talk to a human being who can utilize digital content to help them navigate their way and make decisions. And I think another big skill that I think we need to focus on is listening. It's not about us talking to HCPs, it's about listening and pivoting based on what they tell us. What's your thoughts on that, Dario?
Definitely. That's why we have 2 ears, right? And,
Absolutely.
and only one tongue. So, and definitely, listening is certainly important, and that leads us maybe to the very beginning of our conversation of today, which is everything breaks down to the customer needs. So the whole journey, the whole discussion, the whole experience flow starts and ends with the customer. So if you don't understand that, you can have all of those fancy and shiny stuff, but you will fail. And again, we failed after COVID because we all did the same channels, we all did the same messages, we all had the same capabilities, we all had the same mindset, and we saw what was the end goal, right? So definitely, I think maybe we should think about how to build up the foundations and how to even rethink about the foundations, and then actually to slowly build up a different journey and different path.
Yeah, I remember HCP actually posted on LinkedIn says nothing happens until a human engages another human and creates an emotion that you want to act. So I think we need to get the best of the technology to allow us to have that human connection and create emotion in people.
That's a very good point, and I fully agree with you. Especially, I mean, there are some industries where AI is super applicable. I mean, I believe that 90% of the people nowadays, even more, they hate to go, for instance, to the bank, right? So why would you need to go to the bank? I mean, if you have a new mobile phone, you need to go to the bank. They need to set up your app whatsoever, right? So I think that everyone hates to go to the bank, but and that's a perfect playground for AI for digital, right? But like you said, the current environment is that still I would say HCPs are seeking for H to H, so human to human, for the time being. And then the digital channels are just the complement, the supplement, which is I would say used in various ways and how you can leverage real customer experience.
And I would say human to human doesn't necessarily mean you sit flesh to flesh in front of each other. Human to human is you use I think pharma needs to be channel agnostic, particularly the field team. Know all the channels you have available. It doesn't need to be omni-channel, it could be multi-channel, but use all those channels to provide the relevant information at the right time for the HCP so they can make things happen. And when you meet their need and you have their attention, they engage and they actually create magic. I mean, this morning I had a meeting with an HCP. We were scheduled to meet for 30 minutes. When she came and I started asking her questions, she shared so much information. We ended up talking for an hour and she took most of the actions to actually create a wave that impacts the business across a much wider geography that I initially intended. So it's about listening and being responsive to their need, but have the technology available to be able to follow it up. Yeah.
And to find the right time, right, for
Absolutely.
engagement. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let me ask you, if you could have a lasting impact on pharma industry, what would you want that to be your legacy?
Well, that's a very tough question, and to be honest, I think I'm still too young to speak about legacy, right? But I mean, the journey which we started is all about like creating a platform, an initiative where pharma can move the needle, where pharma can collaborate and rethink how to be better, right?
Hmm.
I mean, nowadays I even don't consider Next as a conference. I really consider it as a platform, as even as a community, because,
Hmm.
like I said during our discussion in backstage and before this interview, I think we still have a very loyal people of trustees who really want to go and come to Next, right? Not to mention, I mean, all of those people, but you see, there is like almost a cult that people want to go to Next to enjoy, to move the needle, and I would say that for the time being, this is something what definitely I consider like a building legacy somehow, like uh, a pharma platform where we can collaborate and really think about different ideas which maybe will be implemented at some stage, right? Of course, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, but you can't be right if you're not provoking the current status quo, right?
Hmm.
I think that's certainly something what we want to do.
Yeah. Well,
Long-term legacy, I mean, like I said, and as we started the discussion, I see myself definitely in pharma. Where the journey will lead us, I mean, I don't know. So who knows? Maybe I will end up in 10 or 15 years in a pharma company.
yeah, maybe, who knows? But you certainly had made your mark. You've been disruptive, you've been visionary, and you actually create a kind of platform for like-minded people to engage. Those who the message resonates with them meet and create magic together. So congratulations for doing that. Dario, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. I'm sure our audience really enjoyed hearing your perspective. I think you've kind of like created a nirvana that pharma could strive for, to replicate what you've done with Next with their own internal events. I really want to thank you and thank our audience, and those of you who joined Maya, Pauline, to contribute to this conversation. I guess I just want to leave with like few parsing notes. I think everybody's talking about omni-channel, all these buzzwords. But what we really want is not omni-channel. What we really want is really meaningful engagement. And I feel really passionate about it, as you know, Dario. And that's why I went and wrote the book about it that you mentioned. I'm just going to share it here. Omni Advantage, because I really want to accelerate that behavioral change we need in terms of mindset and skill set, so we can use the tools in the field to create that meaningful engagement. The book was launched in January. I must admit, I've been so grateful for the amazing reviews I've received from key account managers who are working in the field. Some of them say this has really inspired them, the pain point I'm talking about really resonating with them. So if you're a pharma leader, read the book so you can understand what's really going out there, what are the challenges they're facing. But actually inspires some of them to push and be more brave and move their careers forward. But also I've had some amazing feedback from some inspiring leaders like Patrick, Mark, Erasmus Holm, Andrew Binns, who shared with me that they feel they know what they want to achieve, but the book is giving them like a roadmap of how to go about achieving it. So I really thank you. So as I said, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. I really thank for all of you who joined us for this conversation. And thank you, Dario. You've really inspired me to go and revisit our own perspective on customer experience.
In Dubrovnik and Vienna this time, right?
Oh yeah, I'm already set for it. I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Fantastic. I enjoyed the interview quite a bit, and really looking forward to meeting you again, first in Croatia.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe you should give me the date for Vienna, and we'll pencil that in my diary for later in the year.
23rd, so pencil that in.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here with us. I'm just going to say bye from all of us. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.